Whoa, dude, is that a Game Boy emulation handheld? What? No, it's not a Game Boy, it's a sandwich. Oh, I thought you had a Game Boy emulation handheld that had like custom color palettes and shaders to make it look all fancy and different. And maybe you were gonna show me how to do it, but I guess you're not gonna do that. Nope, never heard of that. Just eating my sandwich. Oh, okay, that's fine. I'm not disappointed. It's fine, really. All right, good. Yeah, good. Enjoy your frickin' sandwich then. The humble Game Boy is an often overlooked console when it comes to retro emulation. I think for lots of people, especially people who didn't grow up with the Game Boy, the limited monotone colorization of Game Boy games is actually kinda off-putting, which is understandable. You don't make friends with 4 shades of gray or 4 shades of creamed spinach color. I personally love me some cream spinach both on my Game Boy games and on my dinner plate, and that sentence proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that I'm an old man, but I think that lots of people need a bit more oomph in their color palettes to make the dusty old Game Boy games that they're trying out feel a smidge less dusty. There's a good few bit of customizations that you can do that really change the experience. It's all superficial, just a fresh coat of paint, but when I can change the vibe of my game to suit my mood, I'll always take advantage of the fact that I can do that. I've made a few videos about Game Boy games and I usually do something with the color palette or the shader. And whenever I show off this kind of thing in a video, I get a ton of questions about how to do it. I think because I'm so deep in the emulation world that I tend to forget that not everyone knows all these tricks. Most of them are super simple as you'll see, but even those are only going to work if you know how to do them. And one thing that I've never really shown on my channel is how to really customize the color palette of your Game Boy games. I'm talking about making your own color palettes. I'll show you how to do that today, and I even made a few of my own that I'll share with you. Upon completion of this course, you will be awarded a certificate of Game Boy customization enthusiasm, which I will probably make for you. What, you think I'm joking? I make certificates all the frickin' time. I make myself at least one a day. Before we dive in, the handheld that you use really does change the Game Boy experience. The good news is that Game Boy is one of the easiest systems on earth to emulate. You can run it on basically anything. 4x3 devices are great. Stuff like the RG35XX Plus or the Miu Mini Plus even look like a Game Boy, which is fun. Square screen devices are arguably even better since the games fill more of the display. 16x9 handhelds are a little more awkward with all that empty space, but honestly, they're still totally fine. My favorite way to play Game Boy games is on the iNeo DMG. It isn't pixel perfect, but the OLED glow makes the games look incredible. But really, at the end of the day, just use whatever doodad you enjoy. There's no wrong choice, really. The only wrong choice that you can make in life is not subscribing to TechDweeb. Well, that and like robbery, arson, murder. Not subscribing to TechDweeb is just as bad as those though. Okay, so you have a retro handheld and you got some Game Boy games up and running. You probably noticed right away that they don't look Game Boy-ish. The color isn't that lovely cream spinach Game Boy color. It's just plain boring, depressing gray, like a millennial's heart. So let's snazz up the place with some colors, shall we? For this, we need to open up the RetroArch menu, and then the area that we want is in the quick menu, and then under core options. Now, this will depend on which Game Boy core you're using, but Gameboy is the default core, and that's the one that most people use, so I'll cover this one, but the process is basically the same for the others. In here, you need to go to GB colorization, and there's a few options, but you're gonna immediately go to internal. And then go back to your game, and then right away, you're gonna see that your Game Boy now has a Game Boy green style to it. If you head back into the core options menu, you can see that there's an internal palette menu. And in here, GB DMG is the default, but there's a whole bunch of other ones. For example, GB Pocket. Pick that and it'll look like the Game Boy Pocket model of the Game Boy. These GBC ones are for the Game Boy Color variants, and SGB is the Super Game Boy options. But picking these here and going back and forth from the game to see them is pretty slow. which is why I suggest you use Gamboy's built-in palette swapping hotkeys. You can actually use the left and right bumpers to switch palettes. This is definitely a lot quicker and easier than going through the menus. Whatever you pick will be the new default for all Game Boy games. When you exit, it'll save what you chose, and then it'll apply that automatically when you start up the next time. If you want to save a specific palette for a certain game, you can go into the core options and then to manage core options and then go to save game options, which will make it so that whatever palette you pick will always be applied to this game. The rest will go with the default. Near the end of the list, you'll get some very interesting packs of palettes. There are 3 packs of TWB64 and 1 pack of Pixel Shift. These packs each contain a ton of options. If you're doing it through the menus, you need to open separate menus to see them all, or you can do what I do, which is frantically tab through hundreds of palettes in-game just to see what jumps out at you. There are so many of these I love. Some of them have just the right vibes for certain types of games. Some feel like different retro computers or products. Some are just colorful and fun. Some are chill and pastel. Some are cute. Some are just weird. I love that we have so many options. I'll put up a few of my personal favorites on the screen for you. Go ahead and pause the video if you want to try these out. One thing that I like to do sometimes is pick a palette to match the color of your device. So like if you have a purple device, you pick a purple palette for your Game Boy games. This also works great if you want to make your Game Boy palettes match the TechDweeb theme of ESCE. So if you want like an orange color for your TechDweeb theme, you can also apply a similar color to Game Boy for ultimate immersion. But colors aren't the only thing we can do to customize the look of our Game Boy games. We can also apply shaders. You can think of shaders like running a program over top of the emulation to change the look of whatever the emulator spits out. And as you can imagine, there are tons of different shaders. I made a whole video about shaders, link below. Go watch that if you want to learn all about the topic, but there are a few specific shaders that are great for achieving maximum retro Game Boy vibes. If you open the shaders menu from the RetroArch quick menu, you can go to load preset and you'll get 2 options in here, GLSL and slang. GLSL is probably the one you want, but if you open up GLSL and all the folders look empty, back out and then try slang. Slang is for Vulkan, by the way. That's why there's 2 sets. GLSL is the default though. In here is a ton of folders, but the one we're interested in is handheld. There's lots to pick from, and I do encourage you to try them all and see what they do and see which ones you like. However, some of them actually require the emulator to not have a custom color applied because they have their own colors built in. For example, this Game Boy Dot Matrix DMG preset. This one is specifically made to mimic the look of the original Game Boy, but you'll need to turn off the custom colorization, otherwise it's going to look weird. This one is cool because it looks like an LCD grid, and it also does like ghosting and a bit of a drop shadow to it. This is the most realistic Game Boy style shader, but look through them and pick which one you like. I personally like to use colorizations for my Game Boy games, obviously, so I don't like the realistic color ones. I'll set my own color and then I'll pick a generic LCD style shader to give it a handheld look. My personal favorite is the dot shader. This one looks like a pixel-based LCD. Not quite Game Boy style, but it's still very nice looking, and most importantly, the dot shader isn't distracting. It's a more subtle effect. The bevel shader is also great, but that one doesn't look great on lower resolution devices. I might use that on a higher resolution display or even a computer, but not usually my lower end handhelds. If you want a more Game Boy Color style LCD, I like Same Boy LCD. So usually I just put on dot for the core itself, and I'll only change it around if I get bored or whatever. When you found the shader that you want to keep, make sure you open the shader menu, go to Manage Presets, and select Save Core Preset, which will make it so that this shader is always enabled when you play Game Boy games on this core. And there's other shaders you can use too. If you want to make your Game Boy look like it's running on a CRT or whatever, the sky's the limit really. Well, I mean, the shader menu is the limit. Whatever's in here is what you can do. There's one more topic that I personally find super interesting. It's kind of the reason I wanted to make this video in the first place. Making your own Game Boy palettes. That's right, you can actually pick your own colors. You can make a custom palette file and use that on your handhelds. I learned about this technique from this video by my girl, Crystal is Cozy. I highly recommend checking out her video because it's really good. I'll link it below. The way that we do this is with the desktop version of Gamboy. So go download that. I'll have it linked for you down in the thingy below. Run it and load up a game. And then get the game to a screen you want to see while you work. I like to use Burger Time, my favorite Game Boy game. And then you can go to Settings, DMG Palette, Global, which will open up a color picking screen. The way this works is you'll have a current scheme option at the top of the list, which you can customize by clicking the colors on the right, and then a pop-up will pop up. In this window, you can change the color to be whatever you want. It might be a little bit confusing how this works if you've never digitally mixed colors before, but basically you have the hue on the left side, and the more saturated version of the colors are at the top, and on the right is the brightness, how dark or light that color is. You can also enter the RGB values for your colors. So for example, if you had a palette already from some other program, or if you want to steal some colors from some sort of piece of art or something, then you can open that up in Windows Paint or whatever program you like to use, and then sample the color and then pull up the RGB values for those colors and copy them over. As you change these colors, you can go back to the game to see how they look, and then keep coming in here to tweak them if you need to. You'll also probably notice that there are 3 palette options here: the background layer and 2 sprite layers. Later Game Boy games were designed to be Game Boy Color compatible, so you can actually have separate palettes for 2 different sprite layers. So in my TechDweeb orange theme that I made here, I have the sprites as like a lighter colorization, so that the sprites stand out a bit more. You can drag these swatches around too. You can clone the colors from one, just drag it onto another one. You don't need to copy and paste the RGB values or whatever. You can even add colors to your custom colors here to use them on new palettes or swap stuff around. When you're done working on your palette, click Save Scheme and then give it a name with a .pal extension. You can also make specific palettes for specific games. So if you name your palette the same exact file name as your ROM file, then that palette will automatically be chosen every time you play that game. To get these palettes on your handheld, you'll need to copy them over to your device. The palette files that you saved will be stored on your computer in this folder. This is where your .pal files are. These need to go into a folder in your device's BIOS directory. This is the way it works on both Android devices and Linux devices, by the way. Wherever it is that RetroArch is looking for your BIOS files, it'll also look for your palette. In the BIOS folder, there should be a palettes folder. If it's not there, go ahead and make it. And then in here is where you'll put your palettes. The ones that are named after games can go in here so that that game will automatically pick that palette. But for the rest, you can only have one palette be the new default. You can't pick it on your device or switch it around on the fly. So what I do is copy all my palettes in here, and then just for one of them, I change the name to default.pal. You can also swap the file names for these on your actual device in the Files app if you need to. So a little bit of file management to swap them around, but it's not too bad. The way you enable the palettes after you have them on there is actually super simple. Open that core options menu, go to GB colorization, and change it to custom. This will use default.pal as the base palette, and specific game named palettes will be applied to when those games get played. And I actually made a few palettes of my own while I was working on this video, so I'll give you those too. Just a few kind of retro feeling palettes that make me personally happy to look at. This one I just call TechDweeb, and it's my brand colors: light beige, orange, gray, and black. This one here is called DMG Dungeon, which is meant to accompany this piece of art that I made for my theme. Kind of my own personal take on the Game Boy DMG aesthetic, but with pure dark blacks for that OLED goodness. This one here is just orange, but with a slightly brighter sprite layer. That's something I didn't see done in the stock palettes that I always wanted, so I finally made one for myself. This one here I just called Hobbit. I tried to make this look like a palette from an old piece of fantasy art from the 70s or something. Just kind of a specific vibe I like. And the last one I call Retro Vibes, and this one's specifically just made to mimic the NES and Game Boy product aesthetic. Light tan, medium gray, dark cherry red, and black. NES and Game Boy DMG style. That's the vibe with this one. I can make more of these if people want me to. Just let me know in the comments if you want to see me make more. But anyways, these ones will be available to download through a Patreon post. This is a public post, by the way, totally free. You don't have to sign up for my Patreon page and support my work and get some fun perks on the side or anything. Not trying to imply anything like that. And with that, we're done. You made it, my friend. A little bit of color tweaking, shader tinkering, palette to binkling. And now that you're the expert that you were always destined to be, as promised, I award you with your certificate of Game Boy customization enthusiasm. I'm not even joking. You actually get to have this, but you gotta download it from the description below and print it yourself. This is more like a community college over here. Budgets, you know? But as always, let me know if this helped you out. Let me know if you have any questions. Oh, also, let me know if you know how to get a permanent marker off a ceiling. I kinda just need to know that for lots of reasons. Anyways, that's all I got for you. I'm TechDweeb and I'm done the video now. Bye-bye.